Afternoon, everyone. It is 3 p.m. We'll call to, excuse me, order the Cobb County Board of Elections and Registration regular meeting for the month of May. The first item on our agenda is the approval of the agenda. Has everyone had an opportunity on the board to review the agenda? Any proposed amendments? Hearing none, we will approve the agenda by consent. Next up is public comment. I note that there is one individual that has signed up in person. I just want to confirm that I know that we have one person that has joined, that will likely join us virtually for a later portion of, or a later item on the agenda, but there's no one that came in today for any signups today for virtual public comment. Okay. That being the case, Ms. Marcia Smith.
Good afternoon.
Hi, Ms. Smith. You will have 5 minutes to make your public comment.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
My name is Marcia Smith. I'm usually here as an observer for the Marietta-Cobb County League of Women Voters, although today I'm only speaking for myself. My comments are in regard to the selection process for the new director of elections and registrations. I'd like to make a suggestion that when you announce your selection, you include whatever qualifications were required to apply for this position, that you include how many people applied for this position and how many people were actually interviewed. I think it would be good for this board, and I think it would be good for the people of Cobb County to know the extent of the effort that was made to fulfill this position that requires a great deal of responsibility and consequences that go with that responsibility. I appreciate you all hearing me today, and I would appreciate it if you would take my suggestion under consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smith, and thank you for being here. The next item on the agenda is the approval of our meeting minutes from our April 24th meeting. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the meeting minutes? Does anyone have any proposed revisions?
Hi, there is one speaker.
Yes, sir. I'm sorry. Would you share your name?
Timothy, you're unmuted.
Yes. So, good afternoon. Mr. Darnell, your opportunity to speak will come at item 4 on the agenda in just one moment, actually after the approval of the minutes. What you just heard when Ms. Smith spoke was the public comment portion, but there is a specific item on the agenda we've identified for the matter that you'll speak during that you'll have an opportunity to speak during that item.
Wonderful. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
You are quite welcome. Okay. I believe no one had any proposed revisions to the minutes. Hearing that being the case, is there a motion to approve the meeting minutes? Thank you, Mr. Gartland. Is there a second? Second. Thank you, Mr. Bruning. All those in favor, if you'll indicate as much. The motion passes by unanimous approval. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is new business. As Mr. Darnell noted, we are here. There's a voter challenge based on a particular provision of the code. I believe Mr. Bill Simon, you are here? Come on up. Yep, come on up, please.
Yes.
So, First, welcome. I don't believe I've had an opportunity to meet you, and I don't believe that you've been here for any of our prior challenges. Just to kind of lay out the process here, we'll give you an opportunity to present your challenge. At that time, when you've concluded your presentation, Mr. Darnell, hopefully you can hear me, you'll have an opportunity to provide any type of response. But in between those, after you've presented, Mr. Simon, if the board has any questions for you, we'll raise those questions to you. And then after that, Mr. Darnell will have an opportunity to rebut or provide whatever response he would like to. We'll have an opportunity to then ask him questions. Thereafter, given the nature of the challenge, the fact that it's based upon law, we will take it up in executive session, just to give you context on,
Awesome.
on how we'll move forward. Okay.
Thank you. All right, before I fully begin, I wanted to know, so I received mailed copies of what was sent to Mr. Darnell and each of you, and those mailed copies did not have all the exhibits. Do you actually have all the exhibits up here?
I have what was sent to, what you sent to the election. Thank you. I have what was sent to the elections office when you initially raised your challenge, but I'm sorry, you're saying,
Okay, so there was a 4-page written narrative, and then there's a separate PDF with like 22 pages of exhibits. Did you receive the exhibits?
yes,
Okay.
via email.
That's what I want to make sure.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. My voter name is William S. Simon,
Okay.
and I declare that I am a qualified elector in Cobb County. I'm filing this challenge based on the provision described in OCGA 21-2-230, challenge of persons on the list of electors by other electors. For each of the following elections, and they start November 3rd, 2020, January 5th, 2021, November 2nd, 2021, May 24th of 2022, November 8th of 2022, and December 6th of 2022, I allege that Mr. Timothy Nathaniel Darnell willfully and knowingly submitted false information on each of the 6 voter certificates required to obtain a ballot for each of the above listed elections. For each of these certificates, Mr. Darnell also swore a false oath that the addresses he filled in were accurate as to his correct current residential address. On at least 2 of those exhibits, or 2 of those voter certificates, if you look at Exhibit A2 and Exhibit A4, there's a statement printed on those forms where it says the following, quote, I understand that making a false statement on this certificate is a felony under OCGA 21-2-562, close quotes. I allege that each violation in each election constitutes a separate and distinct violation of OCGA 21-2-562. Just to point out to this board, this wasn't in my written thing, but just to point something out to this board, Mr. Darnell holds a Juris Doctorate degree from Oak Brook College of Law. He is not a practicing lawyer, but I bring this to your attention because he would fully be aware of what false statement means and what the word felony means. Now, as I said in the write-up, I'm not challenging his residency. That's a concept for a jury, according to law. I'm challenging the truthfulness of his current residential address for each of these elections. And OCGA defines a person's legal address for voting to be a fixed place where the residence of any person shall be held to be in that place in which such person's habitation is fixed without any present intention of removing therefrom. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm going to propose some legal terms. The key to understanding what a habitation is also commonly known as a person's domicile. Last Thursday, I emailed something to the board regarding a Court of Appeals case I was going to cite. Did you get a copy of that?
Smiley v. Davenport?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank
I
you.
have a copy. We have.
I'm just going to cite one phrase from it, and it's like on the third page. It's a person, this is quote, a person may have several residences, but only one domicile, close quote. And I would say that the address of every voter's domicile is what our entire representative democracy is based on. Because if you can only have one legal address where you perform daily activities of sleeping, eating, getting dressed, watching TV, et cetera, that's your legal voter address. That's your domicile address. For each of the 6 exhibits in Exhibit A, they all had a requirement for the voter to fill out blanks where the information being asked was for either current residence address of elector, or voter's residential address, or address, in parentheses, current residence. For every one of these certificates, Mr. Darnell responded by writing in the following address: 5089 Kingsbridge Pass, Powder Springs, 30127. In my exhibits B through F, the evidence shows that as far back as August 15th of 2020, I allege that Mr. Darnell should have updated his address in the voter file, and he should have written the following address on any voter certificate for what his current residential address is. That address should have been 4740 Shady Rest Drive, Powder Springs, zip code 30127. I will stipulate for the record that both addresses are located currently in the exact same precinct of Cobb County. Inhabitants of both addresses vote at the same location, and inhabitants of both addresses have the exact same combo card. So they all vote for the same city council, commissioner, etc. However, as this board knows, at any one time, you could split a precinct. And when you split a precinct, well, one of these residences could end up in a new precinct, while the other house remains in one. And that splitting, the houses could be assigned to a new city council district, a new county commission district, a new state representative district. So that's the importance of why it's important that when you show up to vote, you're putting your exact address where you live as your voting address. I allege that Timothy Nathaniel Darnell's residential address has not been the address of the 5089 Kingsbridge Pass since August of 2020. And he should have not entered that address in any of these 6 voter certificates. I'm going to now talk about the relevant exhibits. I know I appreciate your patience, Ms. Silas.
Oh, no, and it's not just my patience, it's the patience of the board, but it's even beyond that. This is an opportunity for you to speak, so go right ahead.
Okay. So prior to the specific date of July 11th, 2020, there were 2 people named Timothy Darnell who legitimately resided at the 5089 Kingsbridge Pass address. Person 1 was Timothy Nathaniel Darnell, the subject of this challenge. The second person was Timothy Brock Darnell, who was his father. On July 11th, 2020, Nathaniel Darnell got married to Abigail Hope Cochran. Through online research, I presented 2 documents, Exhibit B1, which shows this date and reference to be an online wedding registry for Nathaniel, Mr. Darnell and his wife. And Exhibit B2 is a copy of a congratulations note with the date of July 14th, 2020, from then chairman of the Cobb Republican Party, Jason Shepard, referring to the previous Saturday of July 11th of the Darnell wedding. Approximately 2 months prior to the July 11th, 2020 wedding date, on May 12th, 2020, Abigail Hope Cochran purchased and was the sole grantee listed on the property deed for 4740 Shady Rest Drive. If you review Exhibit C1, you will see the deed for the purchase of this home. Exhibit C2 shows a copy from the Cobb Tax Assessor's Office of the property in her name as the sole owner. Exhibit D shows Mrs. Darnell's voting residence as the 4740 Shady Rest Drive. That record was obtained by me filing open records request to the Cobb County Board of Elections. On the last page of that exhibit, it reflects that on August 5th, 2020, she updated her record to be her new married name and the new residential address at 4740 Shady Rest Drive. In Exhibit E, which is Nathan Darnell's voting record, he shows no update to his voting record for the new house that he got, where the woman he just married on July 11th lives. Exhibit F are records obtained from the Georgia Secretary of State's corporations website concerning a nonprofit corporation formed on or about November 1st, 2021, named the Every Thought Captive Foundation, Inc. If you examine these records, you will see that both Nathaniel Darnell and Abigail Darnell's reference business address for this new corporation is the 4740 Shady Rest Drive address, which is the identical address at which Mrs. Darnell is registered to vote. Mr. Darnell is listed as both the CEO and the registered agent, and the registered office address of this Every Thought Corporation is listed as 4740 Shady Rest Drive. Now, I will stipulate to the Board of Elections that according to Georgia law, the residence for voting purposes of a person shall not be required to be the same as the residence for voting purposes of his or her spouse. But there's another section in that same code area where it's up to the board to determine whether or not Mr. Darnell lives at Shady Rest based on, let's just read off the law here. Where it says the registrars may take into account a voter's financial independence, his business pursuits, employment, income sources, residence for income tax purposes, age, marital status, residence of parents, spouse, and children, and so on information. So that pretty much concludes my challenge. If there are any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Simon. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Simon?
So, Mr. Simon, you're saying it's not, it's all in the same precinct, but you're just saying his truthfulness, which house he lived in?
Pretty much, Mr. Garland, because I mean, a precinct could have, what, like 2,000 residents? I don't know how, 2,000 people, thereabouts.
Right.
But he's still affirming on a written certificate, sir, where it says, if you submit false information here, if you submit an address where you're not, it's not the domicile, then you're in violation of the law. The fact that it probably had no effect on any of these previous 6 elections, we don't know at any time in the future when this precinct may be split.
Oh, that's the future. Understand.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
I guess my concern here, sir, is the specific code provision that you cite as far as with regard to the challenge.
Yeah, the first thing I said, 21-2-230.
Right. No, I'm familiar. We are intimately familiar with 230 as well as 229. Admittedly, I don't believe that code provision is applicable here.
Okay.
In as much that this code provision is used when there is an attempt to challenge in anticipation of a pending election or an upcoming election. Okay. And it looks as, at least to me, and I've got, notwithstanding the fact I'm a lawyer, okay, I've got my lawyer here to keep me honest. And it appears that you're looking retrospectively back to 2020, 21, 2022, yeah, these 6 elections that have taken place from 2020 to 2022.
I think my my request is to have his name removed from the voter rolls for any future election.
I don't believe that we can do that under this code provision, and if you will,
Sure, I'm
If
happy.
y-
You know,
I know you can explain this better than I can.
Right, so under 230, that's the jurisdiction that this was brought under, but I don't see how there's jurisdiction under 230 because that's challenging someone's ability to vote in an upcoming election. Even if you wanted to go back to 229, which says this person is not qualified to be on the voter rolls at all, that also, well, first of all, that's not what he brought.
Right.
And second of all, by his own admission, this voter is qualified to vote in his precinct in the same ballot combo. And if you want to go back to 221-216, which is where you determine the residence or the qualifications of a voter, the person has to swear that they are registered as an elector, they're a citizen of the United States, or at least 18 years of age, a resident of the state and county or municipality in which he seeks to vote, and possessed of all of the qualifications. And this seems to me, for Mr. Simon, there's only maybe one, point that he has here is that this gentleman should have had his correct address. I mean, that's preferable. But the statute that he refers to, the 21-526, that's really that's a matter for, a prosecutor. And if this board found there was some harm and felt like there needed to be a prosecution, I guess you could refer it to but there's nothing in the code and anywhere in this code that says, you can remove a qualified elector because they put the wrong address on there. Now, it does if that person's not qualified to vote where they say they're qualified to vote, but even on his absentee ballot applications, this voter swearing that I'm qualified to vote in this precinct. And so that's those are all true statements except for the address. Also, the case he cites is there's multiple cases where people have multiple residences. If you look at Baker versus Dozier, there's 2 or 3 cases that talk about when people have many reasons for having multiple addresses. They might live part-time with their parents, they might live part-time with their sister, but there was a case where one guy lived with his sister part-time, his mom part-time, with somebody else part-time, and you sort of take them at their word, the voter at their word, that this is where they intend to have their residence, unless you have clear and convincing evidence that they. And so to me, it looks like we have a wedding registry and a Facebook post,
Right.
that are. So again, it's certainly in under 21-130, or 230, I don't understand how that's applicable here, and I don't even think it fits under 229 either. So that's just, we've sort of discussed some of this when the challenge came in, but I don't. The making false statements is something that if Mr. Simon wanted to talk to a prosecutor about, he could, but I'm guessing under prosecutorial discretion, a prosecutor's going to say there's bigger fish to fry.
Right. So I do want to obviously give the opportunity for Mr. Darnell to be heard. So I guess, Mr. Simon, the question or the point you were just about to make, is that in response to what our counsel has shared with us?
Yeah, if I can get a reminder, is 229 the one where it describes that the board is responsible for reviewing the qualifications of any elector at any time?
Oh, yeah, that's 228, and it says the board is responsible, and you've told us he's qualified to vote. You just told us he told us he put a false statement on there, which.
228 describes, sir, at the bottom regarding if you come into your possession of false information, it's your duty under that statute to turn it over to the district attorney's office.
Well, that's actually, you're talking about 220, and that's when someone provides false information, if they provide a false information in a registration, and you have not
Register.
provided evidence today that he registered with false information. And if you want to, then maybe we might have a duty to do that. But that references his registration. So if you have evidence that he registered with false information, we'll consider that.
Awesome, thanks.
Okay. Mr. Darnell, are you still there with us?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you for your patience. Feel free to go ahead and move forward with whatever statement or information you would like for us to hear.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. Do y'all need to have my video turned on, or is there an option for that, or is it just fine to do it?
Sir, we're
formally?
fine, just to hear your statement. Video's not necessary. We
Okay.
couldn't see you anyway, I don't believe. So,
Okay, well, that's fine. Did y'all receive the affidavit and the exhibits that I emailed earlier this afternoon to each of you?
no, unfortunately, I did not.
Okay. It would have been emailed maybe an hour or two ago. And the affidavit kind of lays out my response. If they have a copy they can give to y'all, I'll be happy to go over basically what it says. It says, in regard to Cobb County Elector Challenge letter dated April 14th, 2023, I, Timothy Nathaniel Darnell, hereby swear and affirm as follows. Number one, attached are true and accurate copies of bills, mail, and other official documents sent to me and received at 5089 Kingsbridge Pass, Powder Springs, Georgia, 30127, Exhibit A, and there's scans for Exhibit A. And then number two, it says, my wife and I intend to renovate and rent the property at 4740 Shady Rest Drive, Powder Springs, Georgia, 30127. Number three, I do not know how to prove a negative. It is the challenger's burden to prove my ineligibility. My family has two homes within the same voting precinct in Cobb County. My wife and I lodge both ones from time to time, and I believe the one on my voting registration documents, 50 Kingsbridge Pass, is my legal residence, even if the challenger may disagree. Pursuant to OCGA 21-2-2, residence means domicile. Pursuant to OCGA 19-2-1, domicile means the place where, quote, the family of the person permanently resides, end of quote, and where there is an, quote, actual change of address within the avowed intention of remaining at the new residence, end of quote. Pursuant to OCGA 21-2-217, the residence is where a person's habitation is fixed, quote, without any present intention of removing therefrom, end of quote. Number five, I have no intention of permanently residing at 4740 Shady Rest Drive, Powder Springs, Georgia, 30127, as I presently intend on renovating the home and renting it out. Number six, the challenger admits that I am a resident of the state, county, and precinct where I am registered to vote. I am eligible to vote in the state, county, and precinct which I am registered. My wife and I are allowed to use and stay at more than one home at the same voting precinct, and that is what we do. Number seven, my wife's property registration for the address where the challenger is trying to claim I should write down does not indicate the 4740 Shady Rest Drive as applying for or receiving a homestead exemption. And you can see Exhibit B on that. Number eight, I'm not registered to vote in any other location in the state of Georgia or the United States. Number nine, I meet all qualifications to be eligible to vote in precinct LMO3 in Cobb County in the state of Georgia. And of course, signed and notarized, and they should have a copy for you to read of that affidavit. If you look at the exhibits, you'll see my driver's license, you'll see my tax forms, bills I received are all still coming in at the 5089 Kingsbridge Pass. And you'll see on our tax bill that we do not receive the homestead exemption at the Shady Rest address. Are there any questions? I was going to point out that even though Mr. Simon contends that if there was a split, there might be an issue, the fact is that there actually was not a split in the precinct, and so it's not an issue.
Thank you, Mr. Darnell, and I will apologize for requiring you to read all of that to us because unfortunately the board, my colleagues and I did not receive the information that you shared, but I do believe that that information is instructive as to how we would likely move forward in assessing this challenge. Does anyone here on the board have any questions for Mr. Darnell? I know I do not.
I would just like to request that we somehow get a copy of that if possible. Mr. Darnell, if you could check and make sure we all receive that email, that would be helpful.
Yes, ma'am. I sent it to the general email account. I can email it again to each of you individually or wherever you prefer. I'd be happy to.
Yes, I mean, I have my laptop right here. If you will email it to me, Mr. Darnell, and this is tori.silas@cobbcounty.org. I will ensure my colleagues receive it.
Yes, ma'am.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
Uh-huh. Is there anything else I can provide for y'all?
I do not have any further questions for Mr. Darnell. Does anyone else? No? Okay. I thank you.
I'm sending that email to you as we speak.
Okay, I greatly appreciate that. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Simon.
Welcome.
That concludes the items that are noted as old business on the agenda. I'm sorry, new business on the agenda. Does anyone have old business they want to raise?
Do we have dates?
Oh, yeah, I was going to jump into that in board member comments. Yeah, absolutely, no worries. So moving on to the next item on the agenda, board member comments. As was referenced earlier by Ms. Smith, we are obviously in the midst of a recruitment and interview process for the new Cobb County Elections Director. And I would like to share, as we have previously done, with the community where we are in that process. So on the 12th and the 13th of last month, I believe during our last meeting here on the 24th, we advised that we had conducted phone screens. From those phone screens, we've identified applicants that we will interview on the 24th of this month. And following those interviews, we will obviously down select to most likely 2 applicants that we intend to present to the Board of Commissioners. So that is where we are. So the date, Mr. Gartland, is the May the 24th.
Gotcha. Thank you.
And I anticipate Ms. Garvin, Latasha Garvin from Cobb County HR will be providing the times of the interviews. I do not have that information as of yet. I know that Ms. Gibson is here with us. Ms. Gibson, I don't know if you have anything further that you would like to share. I think you reached out to Ms. Garvin.
No, we just confirmed the 24th.
The 24th? Okay, thank you. That concludes my comments. Does anyone have any further comments? Yes, sir?
We'll be part of that, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. When you say you'll be part of that, the interview process?
Yeah.
Oh, of course. Yes, we've previously stated that all 5 members of this board are part of a 9, yeah, most definitely. All 5 members of this board are part of a 9-member interview committee that will also include Ms. Jatun Gibson, a previous elections director from an outlying county, as well as 2 directors that are currently 2 individuals that are currently directors of departments here in Cobb County. Anyone have anything further? Board comments or questions with regard to the director search process, or for that matter, any additional comments related to the director search or otherwise? Nope. I note that our next scheduled meeting is June the 12th, right here at 3 p.m. Mr. White, I would like for us to go into executive session for the purposes of discussing matters that could potentially lead to litigation, specifically the challenge. And so that being the case, sir, do you have any items for executive session?
I'll make you do just a brief litigation update.
Litigation update, okay. And so,
Pending litigation.
pending litigation, perfect. So for those of you that are joining us for the first time, we'll entertain a motion to go into executive session. Once that motion passes, we will require that everyone here in the room vacate the premises. Just step right outside. I don't anticipate that we'll be in executive session long. We'll let you know when you could come back in. So I'll entertain a motion to move into executive session.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Kirtland. And Mr. Gartland, thank you. All those in favor? The motion passes. We will entertain a motion to exit executive session.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you, Mr. Gartland. It's been moved and properly seconded to exit executive session. All those in favor? The vote is unanimous. Thank you. Is there a motion on the proposed challenge or the challenge that was presented to us?
Wrong one. I move to dismiss the challenge.
Okay. Is there a second? And if I might make an amendment to the motion to dismiss the challenge for lack of finding a probable cause.
Accept.
Okay, thank you. We'll go ahead and call the question. All those in favor of approving the motion as amended? It's unanimous. Thank you. Again, I believe I've already stated that the next scheduled meeting is June 12th here at 3 p.m. There being nothing further, we will adjourn this meeting at 3:57 p.m. Thank you, everyone.